Tractor power all over the world. This film shows the most modern tractors at their daily work. Machines with up to 600 horsepower work the large fields of farms in America, Romania, and of course, Germany. Enjoy Tractor Giants 3. The Steiger No. 1, the forefather of the tractor giants. Brothers Doug and Morris Steiger, along with their father John, built this poison green giant in just one winter using parts from other vehicles and a loan of over $10,000 from the Union State Bank. In the spring of 1958, the Steiger Colossus drove across the fields of the Steiger farm for the first time. Dick Peterson grew up with No. 1 and he knows the secrets of this first tractor giant, which has now clocked over 10,000 working hours. The 5-speed transmission came from a truck and the axles belonged to a mining vehicle. A 671 Detroit engine powers the Green Monster. With 238 horsepower, the Steiger No. 1 was very powerful and exactly how the four-wheel drive pioneers wanted it, because all other tractors on the market were simply too small for the Steiger family back then. At that time, they farmed around 800 hectares of land. At some point, they wanted to have more efficient equipment, so the two brothers, together with their father, came up with some ideas, designed it like that, and, well, the farmers from the area liked it. So, around the year 1960 or 61, they built 3 smaller ones. They were only about half the size of this one here, so maybe about as big as No. 4, which I will show you shortly. So, before the other really big tractors, they first built smaller ones. In total, they probably assembled 126 tractors in the barn. Here at the Bonanzaville Museum in West Fargo in North Dakota, No. 1 has found its home and it fits wonderfully into this small museum town. Numerous exhibits bear witness to America's rapid technical development. In the Car Museum, there are cars from all eras starting from 1904. In the tractor exhibit, numerous horsepower from case tractors are crowded together, but the lives of early immigrants are also shown here. A journey into the history of North Dakota, not just for the region's school classes. And here at the museum, Steiger veterans who dedicated their whole lives to this tractor meet time and again, like Dick Peterson and Syl Melroe, whose cousin Les Melroe strongly influenced the fortunes of Steiger starting in the 70s. Doug and Maurice only built a few tractors at the beginning until they realized there was a market for them. In 1970, my cousin Les Melroe bought the company, which had just moved to Fargo in 1969. That is when production really began, so you could say that Steiger had 2 beginnings. 58 on the farm, and 69 when the marketing, sales, and production really began. But 69 and 70 were when it truly took off, and those were good times as a salesman for the Steiger brand. The market shot to infinity, from 0 to 100. In just a few years, 14,000 tractors were sold. When the new tractors hit the market, it was clear how many work steps could be saved. What farmers used to need 800 hours a year for, they could now manage in 300 hours, which also reduces wear and tear on the tractor. We competed with all the big companies like John Deere, for example, and had a large market share. We sold quite a lot. Between 1,000 and 1,500 tractors were sold per year, but this success did not come by chance. Steiger became a real master salesman, and Syl Melroe advanced to become the head salesman. He built up a huge distribution network. Back then, his salespeople held sales pitches everywhere, promoting the modern giant tractors. The farmers were to be convinced by the large machines. The most important selling points were the working speed and the reliability of the Steiger tractors, and to some extent, the enthusiastic employees. Well, I started out working on the assembly line. After that, I moved into the service department, but that wasn't easy either. Back then, we had transmission problems with many tractors, again and again. That meant we had to change the tractor's transmissions on site with the farmers. There were probably almost 175 tractors for which we had to replace the transmission with a newer and more powerful one. But it was a very, very good workplace. The pay was actually quite decent. The company bosses looked after their employees, and there was even an employee profit-sharing scheme. We were able to purchase company shares, making us one of the first companies in the area to do something like that. The Melroes were also involved in the whole thing, and they were certainly decent employers too. Dick Peterson shows us his favorite tractor, the one with the number 4. It has a standard 5-speed transmission and a power takeoff, which was quite unusual for 4-wheel drive tractors back then. Although number 4 only has a 73 Detroit engine and just half the power of number 1, this tractor is still one of the gems of the collection at the Bonanzaville Museum. It is, in fact, the first Steiger farm tractor to experience something like mass production. Just 3 of this series were built. Then the larger tractors returned. Some smaller Steiger tractors were also produced for forestry. They had a winch in the front and a boom in the back. That made them perfectly equipped for the heavy work in the woods and forestry. The Steiger 4 consists only of used parts. The later models were already built with new parts, but this one was just built from old, used parts. When Dick Peterson and Syl Melroe start gushing, you can hear how proud they are to be a part of Steiger history. They love to chat surrounded by their giants. On the right is number 1, and on the left is the cougar, the puma, which is one of Syl Melroe's favorites. We had all these animal names: Wildcat, Super Wildcat, Bearcat, Cougar, Tiger, and later the Panther. The Cougar was a really good tractor, but the Tiger was even better. We installed a big Cummins engine in that one with maybe 440 or 500 horsepower. I also like to call it my tractor, although the engineers and the very good sales department were mainly responsible for its success. I cannot say if I had a favorite, but the Cougar already had a really good reputation, but the Tiger was good too, just its size alone. It was really great taking both of them to agricultural trade fairs. Even though the huge Steiger tractors do show their age occasionally. The Steiger story is a fantastic one, born from a dream of 3 men from Minnesota. Doug and Maurice were simple farmers. They had never attended college. Instead, they worked with their father on their dream. But it was mainly Doug and Maurice who made it happen. They were self-taught engineers, and it is quite interesting to compare the first Steiger tractor with a modern tractor. The articulated joint, for example, still looks exactly the same today. The materials are much better now, of course, and quite a bit has been revised, but the concept is still the same as it was in the beginning. Doug and Maurice were very interesting people. Maurice was more the engineer and Doug took care of the sales, but neither of them was a very good businessman. They were just practical, and on top of that, they were both really nice guys. I enjoyed being with them, and working with them was fun. Maurice Steiger died in a plane crash in March 1991. Of the three builders of number 1, only Doug Steiger is still alive. And nearly 55 years after number 1 left the barn in Minnesota, the Steiger still looks mighty impressive, and it certainly does not have to shy away from comparisons with today's tractors, at least according to Dick Peterson. The Steiger was a good tractor, and the Case IH is of course a good tractor too. By the way, I still work for a company that builds axles and transmissions for the Steiger and Case IH four-wheel drives. That means I am still involved, and that is nice. The Steiger family apparently never lets you go once they have truly grabbed hold of you. Fargo, North Dakota. Here, the Steiger tradition lives on. The Steiger STX is produced at the Case New Holland plant. Well over 50,000 of these giants have been built here so far. Fargo is home to nearly 105,000 residents, and the company founded by Jerome Increase Case is omnipresent here. Just 10 miles outside the city, Butch Grabenhoft works his fields with the Steiger STX 375. In 2005, he bought the big one from Case YH. We have had very good experiences. It is above all fuel efficient, and the maintenance work was manageable. There were no major repairs. We mainly use the Steiger for tillage to loosen the soil and prepare it for planting. After the harvest, we needed to get the fields back into good condition. Beets, potatoes, grain. North America is fertile, and that is why Butch Grabenhoft's family business is thriving too. Each year, the family earns about $110,000 on their 2,800 acres. That is nearly 1,200 hectares. There are some farms that are similar in size, but there are also smaller ones and much larger, significantly larger ones. I run the farm together with my brother and our sons, so there are 4 of us. The Grabenhofts' family farm seems tranquil, especially on a stormy September day. Today, all machines are idle here because the previous day turned the fields into lakes. So today, the MX 210 cannot show its almost 200 horsepower in the field. Butch uses the conventional Case tractor for the potato harvest. The large beet harvester from Amity Technology is regularly pulled across the fields here by the Case 245, and the powerful Magnum MX 220 is also used for this. Nevertheless, with deep soil, it repeatedly happens that the large Steiger has to become the rescuer. During the beet harvest, we use so-called safety tractors. They pull out our weaker tractors when they get stuck. For that, we simply attach them to a hook. We used to use ropes for that, but that was just too dangerous. In August, the successful harvest is celebrated here in Sabin, in front of the 52 General Store during the Sabin Harvest Days. Butch Grabenhoft and his family will also be there. We are leaving Sabin in Minnesota and traveling 10,000 kilometers east to another world, to Gataia. The small town is located in the western part of Romania, 40 kilometers away from the provincial capital Timișoara, the second largest city in the Carpathian nation. Gataia seems sleepy. The rural flair reveals the economic boom has by no means reached everywhere here, and yet large case tractors are working in the vast fields of Gataia. An Italian investor has launched the agricultural company Don Carlos here. Don Carlos is an Italian trading company. In 2001, our company bosses bought 4,500 hectares of land in the Gataia area. We have also been farming here since 2004. We also have a large branch where we market our products, of course. These include seeds and planting stock, corn, millet, soy, rapeseed, and many other products. We naturally export the largest part to our home country, Italy. We even have our own railway line. That is a very big advantage. Last year, we marketed 55,000 tons of agricultural products. Romania has one of the largest railway networks in Europe, but many sections are in poor condition. The rail connection right on the farm next to the silos is a huge advantage for the company's logistics. Don Carlos employs 35 permanent staff, 20 of them just as drivers in the field, and almost all of them drive a Magnum. Since 2005, since I have been working at this company, we have only used case tractors. So we do not work with any other tractors, and since then we have been customers of Case and are very satisfied. At first, we only bought one Case tractor on a trial basis to see how it performed in the field, and it convinced us. That is why we expanded our fleet by 4 tractors a year later. So now we have 5 285 Case tractors. They use the Case Magnum for all their field work here. On the heavy Romanian soil, you need real power under the hood because seedbed preparation with a 7-meter field harrow can be quite a challenge. A Magnum MX 285, however, manages that, even when the fields are very uneven. After all, it has an output of 286 horsepower. But on the heavy soils in Gataia, it is not just about the power of the tractors, but above all about having enough traction. And this is where it becomes clear why the Italians in Romania rely on the Magnum. The MX 285 is to prepare the field for planting rapeseed, a mammoth, or rather, a Magnum task. Because the 15-share plow digs 30 centimeters deep through the heavy soil. And despite the 2.5-meter working width, the Case pulls its lanes at a speed of up to 7 kilometers per hour. The MX 285 manages 25 hectares a day, consuming between 20 and 40 liters of fuel per hour. The reason for this drudgery is that there is no stubble cultivation at Don Carlos's farm. Here, they plow immediately after the harvest. This saves one work step, and that is why they rely on tried and tested equipment for soil cultivation. We naturally use Italian plows because we are Italians after all. For the disc harrows, however, I rely on Besson from France. I believe they are excellently suited for these heavy soils. The discs are, in fact, particularly resistant. For soil cultivation, we use machines from Wedderstad because they are also made of good material and, above all, they have a coherent technical concept. The seed drills are also from Wedderstad and they really work very well. Romania has long since ceased to be an adventure for the Italians. They have been farming these fertile fields since 2004. The drivers work here day and night in a 24-hour operation, and in these 2 shifts, they only go to refuel twice a day. This system has proven itself for Don Carlos. Working at night is no problem. The case tractors have very good lighting. I think you sometimes even work better at night. There are really no difficulties because day or night it makes no difference anymore. And now the case Magnum, which had to stand still for 10 minutes for our interview, must get back to work. After all, at Don Carlos's farm, the freight cars are already waiting for the next harvest, so that the Romanian cereals can become the breakfast cereals we know as quickly as possible. In the 60s, a true giant was manufactured in Hungary, Romania's neighbor. The Dutra was built at the Red Star tractor factory in Budapest. Just like this, D4KB. From 1964 to 1975, the Hungarians produced about 15,000 units. East Germany imported about 4,000 of them, making it the largest export customer. But the English also imported the Dutra, albeit with a different engine. The socialist version of the 5-ton tractor was powered by a Schäpel engine, which was designed for Hungarian buses.
And they installed that in the tractors at the same time. There was a large one, that's the one, the 6-cylinder with 9 horsepower, and the small one is the 4-cylinder with 65 horsepower. And then, of course, they built another one before that, a UE28, which only had a 2-cylinder engine in it, but that one never really caught on here in the GDR. So there were only the A, which is the 4-cylinder, and the B, the big one, the 6-cylinder.
In Pirna, Saxony, the tractor gang has brought a D4KB back to life. Now it shines once again in the light blue typical of GDR Dutras. The team from Pirna took the entire engine apart: gaskets, oil seals, electrical system, brake pads. The Dutra was therefore built here for a second time, and a few details that a collective farm member had to do without were added.
What also sets our vehicles apart, everything we have restored so far, is the exclusive snakeskin interior. It is only used by us and is always an eye catcher. It is, of course, faux leather, not real snake.
The 6-cylinder engine is preheated. The Dutra starts moving. It is loud and the ride comfort is quite modest. Without a trailer load, the Dutra bounces more than it drives. The Dutras were simply built for heavy agricultural work. As a road tractor, the 5-meter-long Hungarians were not particularly suitable due to their unfavorable weight distribution. In addition, the long snout, in which the entire weight of the engine was located, was a disadvantage, especially when cornering. Often the journey ended against house walls or trees. Nevertheless, this 4-wheel drive tractor plowed up half of the German Democratic Republic until the mid-70s. But then came the modern Soviet giant K700 and the advanced ZT tractors made in the German Democratic Republic. And every agricultural production cooperative that wanted such a modern tractor had to scrap its Dutra first. Steel scrap was scarce back then, which is why the Dutras died out in the German Democratic Republic. Mike Newman was an apprentice at the time and witnessed his colleagues destroying the collective farm's only Dutra.
Back then it was quite an experience if you were allowed to drive something like that. But I didn't have the luck to drive it for long because I had it and the old farmers really wanted to pull a large chestnut tree and it didn't go quite right at first, back and forth twice. The rope snapped, boom, and suddenly it was split in two. The center tunnel was basically ripped away from the bolts, then the front part was on its own and the back part on its own, and that was the end of it. So that was another one, so to speak, that ended up being scrapped.
And here it stands, the Russian giant responsible for the Dutra almost dying out in the German Democratic Republic, the K700. Compared to the over 200 horsepower under that monstrous yellow steel structure, the Dutra seems rather small and fragile. But here at the World Championship in natural stone roller pulling in Oberlausitzer Chemnitz, the tractor gang also wants to show what is under the hood of their Dutra. At the World Championship, multi-ton stone rollers must be pulled over a gravel bed, sometimes quite spectacularly, like with this Lanz semi-diesel with 24 horsepower. Mike Newman, the driver of the Pirna Dutra, watches his competition with interest. In the largest class, the machines have to pull a 4-ton stone roller over the gravel pile. For this 150 horsepower John Deere from 1966, that is no problem at all. But can the Dutra from the Pirna tractor gang do it too? Mike Newman sits tensely in his cab because all tractors must compete without engaging four-wheel drive. Here we go. During practice, the 90 horsepower was simply too weak for the gravel pile. And now, was he able to pick up a tactic? The Dutra shatters all emission standards. Black smoke rises into the sky. The Hungarian giant is giving it his all, but he cannot conquer the hill. Still, the people from Pirna celebrate their giant. Only Mike Newman seems a little unhappy.
I expected a bit more, but the sand is actually quite stubborn.
With four-wheel drive engaged, the gravel hill could have been conquered. A little later, another Dutra D 4KB proves this. The 4-ton roller is pulled over the gravel hill like a toy. After the strain of pulling the stone roller, the D4KB is back in the workshop. Here it is lovingly maintained and spruced up because the Pirna team wants to sell their Hungarian tractor with the snakeskin seats to make room for the next restoration project. The asking price, by the way, is 27,500 euros. 8 o'clock in the morning. The workday begins at the Andershof Steinhagen Agricultural Company in Wendorf, Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. Mario Segler and Hans-Henning Koopman are heading to today's worksite with the company's 2 Class Xerion tractors. Just a few kilometers from the farm, a field is to be prepared for the next sowing. Hans-Henning Koopman drives ahead with his Xerion 3800. Mario Segler follows behind with the Xerion 4500. Despite their large tires, both vehicles are road legal without special permits and reach a maximum top speed of 50 kilometers per hour. That applies both forwards and backwards. And so, after a relatively short drive, the two arrive at the field and can begin preparing for their work. Both cultivators must first be unfolded, as both have a working width of more than 3 meters. Attached to the Xerion 3800 is a 7.5 meter Köckerling Vario, which will work the soil to a depth of about 8 to 10 centimeters. The Xerion 4500 will make its passes with a 6 meter wide Steiger AS. The continuously variable ZF transmission in the Xerions always ensures the right gear ratio. Mario Segler drives the class Xerion 4500. Since 2009, the vehicle has been on the farm, one of the first of its type, delivered as a pre-series model at the time. Under the hood, a 6-cylinder Caterpillar engine with 12.5 liters of displacement operates. The engine and transmission management is handled via the so-called CBIS terminal. All settings are made here so that the Xerion is easily operated by joystick while working.
Yes, we have the control element here, the joystick. We have a switch here for driving forwards and backwards. It is activated forwards or backwards depending on which direction we want to drive. We have the lever here for the drawbar to raise and lower the machines, the attachments. Here we have 2 more controls for the hydraulics for folding in and out, or deploying, depending on what you have saved here. Here we have the autopilot, which I can activate here. And up here, the cruise control. At the corresponding speed that we have saved.
In 2009, the Xerion 4500 was introduced by Claas at Agritechnica, alongside its slightly larger counterpart, the Xerion 5000. With these 2 models, the company has expanded its tractor range. The maximum output of the 4500 is just over 480 horsepower. The 5000 even has 500 horsepower. They say a tractor needs about 40 kilograms of weight per horsepower to develop optimal pulling power. The Xerion 4500 is equipped with additional weights at the front and rear, bringing it to a total weight of about 20 tons. And so, the 6-meter-wide Steiger is no problem for the Xerion 4500, not even when, as seen here, the cultivator's tines pull furrows 28 to 30 centimeters deep into the soil. The Xerion handles this at a speed of about 12 kilometers per hour. The cabin offers the driver plenty of comfort, radio and air conditioning. There is even a refrigerator under the passenger seat. The driver's seat is naturally sprung and can even be heated in winter. The all-around visibility in the cab is enormous thanks to the large windows and the high seat.
Which do I prefer driving? Well, on the road, it's nicer in a car. In the field, the Xerion is actually really okay. It is a very quiet, pleasant ride in the field. Thanks to the weight tires, low air pressure. We are driving with Agrocom. This is a parallel guidance system that is set up here. We no longer need to steer in the field.
Precision farming is the keyword here. This means the Claas Xerion from the Andershof Steinhagen Agricultural Company drives across the field using GPS. And that is accurate to within a few centimeters because an RTK reference station from Agrocom is also installed on the farm premises. The smaller Xerion, the 3800, is also equipped with this system.
Yes, GPS, it is actually a really great thing. Here you have to create an A to B line. So I set a point A, let's say at the start, drive 200 meters. 200 meters is a good distance. Then I press point B, and then it has saved the line, yes, and then I just press the automatic button and then it works.
The prerequisite, of course, is that the driver first enters the working width of their implement into the system. Then the computer calculates the appropriate driving paths. The system does a lot for soil conservation and efficiency, as there are no overlaps during cultivation. Almost every centimeter of a field is worked, and only once. The soil is further protected when the Xerians do their work, as seen here in what is known as crab steering. Each of the 4 wheels has its own track. The weight of the tractor is therefore optimally and evenly distributed across the ground. Change of location. The Class Xerians are back at the farm buildings of the Anderhof Steinhagen Agricultural Company. It is time for us to take a look at the inner workings of the Xerian 4500. Operations Manager Aurel Hagen is the true master of his Xerians. He places great importance on the maintenance of his machines and implements. On his 2,150-hectare farm, he primarily grows rapeseed, wheat, barley and sugar beets, 80% without ploughing. That means using the Köckerling Vario and the Horsch Tiger.
Yes, the special thing about this machine is specifically the Caterpillar engine, a very large displacement engine with a lot of torque and, as I said, 480 horsepower. And then Vestzin specifically tailored for agriculture, this large fan at the front with the large fan blade, which can be reversed. That means you can reverse it and then the dust is blown back out so the machine doesn't get dusty in the field and overheat as a result. Furthermore, we see here and on the other side 2 alternators. The machine has 2 voltage systems, one 24 volt and one 12 volt. That is for 12 volts for the normal lighting and 24 volts for the vehicle electronics and for starting. It is important to get this large engine running reliably. Yes, this large pipe is actually the air intake for the engine. It comes from the other side, from the turbocharger. I would like to show you that. To do so, I will start the machine, turn the steering the other way, and then we can take a look at the other side. Yes, on this side we can see the exhaust system of the Claas, or rather the Caterpillar engine. We have the turbocharger here, then we have the exhaust, which later ends in this beautiful chrome pipe, and we have the pipe here that goes to the other side, which we saw earlier. That is the air intake for the engine, where it is supplied with fresh air. Yes, here we see one of the 4 tires on the Xerion. We have the extra large tires on here, which are still road legal, 960 R42. We have a tire height here that is well over 2 meters, as you can see by looking at me. And the interesting thing about this tire is that we drive with 1 bar of air pressure in the field as well as on the road. You can see it very clearly here by this bulge at the bottom that has formed on the tire. And to optimally transfer the Xerion's high tractive power, we ensure that 3 lugs are always engaged with the soil, keeping the contact area as large as possible to prevent soil compaction and fully utilize the tractive force.
Finally, there is just one thing left, the turning radius of the Xerion 4500. Thanks to the 2 steerable axles, it is 6.5 to 7 meters. For a giant, that is not bad at all. Not only at first glance does this nose remind one of a Challenger crawler. Here at the Budisa Agrar farm in Peitz stands the large Terragator 8333, introduced at Agritechnica 2009. It is 10 o'clock. The surrounding fields are finally accessible again after the heavy rain of the past few days. The gigantic Terragator drives past Saxon fields at 40 kilometers per hour toward its work site near Bautzen. At 3 meters 15, it takes up almost the entire width of the road. Arriving at the field, Sven Thomas can finally see what his Challenger Terragator is made of, because it has only 17 working hours behind it, and today at least 10 more should follow. Before we can get started, however, the liquid manure has to reach the field. It is not being brought by tankers as usual, but is pumped directly from the barn to the field. And the yellow giant waits hungrily for the liquid manure from the dairy farm. The manure tank holds just over 15 cubic meters and is now connected to the chassis at 6 points for better weight distribution and driving stability. The new superload system also allows for much faster filling of the tank.
The standard slurry pump has primed. Once it has primed, it automatically switches to the superload, as that is the pump on the suction arm above. And with that, the 50 cubic meter slurry tank, let's say, is filled in just under a minute and a half.
In Peitz, they also fertilize with a 17-year-old Horsch TT 350 VS alongside the Terragator. The old self-propelled slurry tanker still works without any issues, but the Horsch can no longer really keep up with the massive 360 horsepower of the Challenger Terragator. Just filling the smaller slurry tank takes almost twice as long as it does with the Terragator. Sven Thomas also enjoys driving the old Horsch, but he would not have dared to take the 17-year-old self-propelled sprayer into this mud battle. That is a job for the Terragator. 160 liters of rain over the past few days have brought field work here to a standstill. The field was flooded, and now the Challenger has to show what it is made of. It is literally plowing through the deep, wet ruts.
A good day, yes. On every field you have a few square meters that are wet.
Sven Thomas is confident that he will win this mud battle, especially since he only drives here when his slurry tank is almost empty.
If there is anything in here, if there is a bit of a load, you do not need to commit. It is pointless to drive into the water here in the slurry. The tractor will not get through later on, but it has to be ripped up first so that it can dry out too. That is the be-all and end-all.
And in this mud battle, only power helps. While you could widen the contact area with lower tire pressure to defy the mud a little more, Sven Thomas always drives here with 2.8 to 3 bar, because previous attempts by no means brought the desired success.
We used the button to let the air out, but the tires didn't last long that way. It would literally cut them right off the rim. We tried it with the Horsch, and on the new machine we don't do that at all anymore. If you need 3 new Terra tires a year, you start to think about it, whether you would rather drive them with the normal air pressure as prescribed. You can let the air out, yes, but that does not go well for long. And those things, the 3 wheels always turn on one axle. You can do it on the headland. You drive row by row. You turn around on the spot. So one wheel stays put, and eventually it cuts your tire or pulls the sidewall off the rim, and then you're stuck with a flat.
The old Horsch brings 354 horsepower to the field, almost as much as the 6-cylinder engine of the Challenger Terragator. But the 8333 is a pioneer. It is the first special vehicle worldwide to feature the continuously variable Texter transmission from Challenger. The big yellow one is superior to the big red one in many respects. That starts with the comfort in the driver's cab. The 3-stage filter system, for example, ensures good air quality in the cab and makes work much easier, especially when spreading liquid manure. And the work performance has also changed due to the large machines in recent years.
Yes, and as Atom is a fatalist. The 6 tractors with such small tanks here. The S100 drove around in shifts, and we do it in pairs or in groups of 4, depending on when we work shifts on 2 machines.
All that remains to be said is, see you later, Terragator. America, in Saxony, as small as this village may be, nearby, at the Arnuber farm machinery dealership stands a true giant from Deutz Fahr, the Agrotron X 720. Today it is set to pull the large square baler with a front-mounted chopper from Vicon. A feat of strength for any tractor. The final preparations are being made so that the new giant from Deutz Fahr can bring its full engine power to the field.
What has just been improved now is the new engine technology, common rail injection, then regulated turbocharger. We have regulated exhaust gas recirculation, and what is, let's say, quite crucial nowadays is the B100, that you can run on 100% biodiesel. Because nowadays up to 7% is already in normal diesel fuel, which some engines can't even handle anymore.
Felix Friedemann has been preparing the Agrotron for its mission since 8 o'clock. The X720 has been in service here for a year now. Major repairs have not been necessary so far, but today the Agrotron is still standing idle, and it is now almost 12 o'clock. But it is not a technical problem forcing the reliable Deutz Fahr tractor to a standstill, but the lack of sun. Because it only allowed the straw that is to be baled today to dry very late. Time for Felix Friedemann to reveal another secret of the tractor, because actually the X720 only has a peak output of 275 horsepower. But the Arnova workshop team gave the Agrotron a little boost, doping the engine a bit, so to speak.
You need the extra power, otherwise you just won't manage the hectares. With 300 horsepower, when starting up the baler, the 300 horsepower just collapses. The tractor can stall, so all that stress goes through the tractor. If it has more power, you don't have to drive as fast. You can go easier on the tractor, and it has, I think, 50 horsepower more from the injection.
At nearly 40 kilometers per hour, the Agrotron races along the narrow country roads with its baler. But then, disappointment in the field. The 300 horsepower giant is standing still again. The winter barley is simply still too damp to bale. So, retreat from the field. The Deutz Fahr has to leave the field involuntarily once again. And while Azerion starts its duty for fertilizing, the Agrotron has to wait for the next sunshine. A few days later, the X720 is in full action. Near the A72 by Chemnitz, salesman Axel Drescher is baling himself today. During the harvest season, it is common for all employees to pitch in, even those who are otherwise responsible for the sales and rental of the machines. And salesman Axel Drescher naturally loves driving his big Deutz Fahr, especially since the Agrotron is also a little gem when it comes to cabin equipment.
There is a Deutz Fahr slogan: get in, feel good, drive off. There aren't a bunch of colorful monitors and buttons that are confusing. It's just simple, straightforward, and functional. Many farmers already say they don't want to become astronauts. Sure, all of it, every advancement, it's all a great story. But it also has to be easy to use. If you have temporary workers during, let's say, the peak work seasons these days, they still need to be able to handle a machine quickly.
The first bales are pressed. The tractor's bumpy ride is due to the large plunger in the back of the baler, but the cab suspension cushions most of it. Without the huge baler, the tractor normally drives as smoothly as if it were on rails. And to prove it, Axel Drescher stops the tractor and shows the massive plunger of the Vicon LB 12290 baler.
That is the piston where the impacts come from. That is idling now, right? And whenever the piston hits the straw at the back, you can feel that in the tractor.
Today, long straw is being baled, so the front chopper remains off. Such a bale is over 2 meters long and weighs between 350 and 450 kilos. Axel Drescher measures the moisture and is satisfied. And after this short break, we continue, because today his Agrotron gets to work straight through. Thanks to the wear-free turbo clutch, the X720 starts smoothly, whether on a slope or under load. The transmission is practically stepped, just as it has always been with Deutz-Fahr tractors.
We now have a ZF power shift transmission here, which has been around for years and has also proven itself. I would say the trend is moving toward continuously variable, but since we at Deutz still offer everything, including the power shift transmission, there are many customers who don't even want the continuously variable. And experience also shows that those the power transmission, the power losses in such a manual transmission are actually lower than in a continuously variable one.
The ZF transmission has 13 gears in the main working range alone, which is between 4 and 15 kilometers per hour. Time is pressing, rain is forecast. Axel Drescher is practically flying across the field. The time lost due to the rain in the past few days must be made up. The 6-cylinder turbo diesel does not reach its performance limit despite the rush. One reason for this, the Austerity, the special tires.
It can basically be fitted with 38-inch tires at the front, which then puts the power onto the field. Because nowadays every tractor, 300 horsepower, 350 horsepower and so on, the only thing that is done is ballasting. They add, let's say, tons of weight to the tractor, but that is all detrimental to the soil. It is better to have wider, larger tires that have a bigger contact area. In that moment, I am working in a soil-friendly way and also getting traction onto the ground.
These 5 hectares are pressed quickly, and the massive X720 moves on to the next field. Today, Axel Drescher wants to keep pressing well into the night, at least for as long as the straw remains dry. Here it comes, the large John Deere 9520T crawler. The dimensions alone are gigantic, almost 7 meters long, 3.5 meters wide, and 3.51 meters high. Nearly 22 tons are rolling across the yard of the agricultural machinery dealership in Düben. And compared to this giant, many other John Deeres look more like a dwarf. The large John Deere 9000 series models are available as articulated tractors with all-wheel drive, or just like this one, with tracks.
The crawler, compared to the wheeled tractor, has the advantage that the ground pressure, meaning the machine is gentler on the soil, right? However, the range of use is more limited, right? A wheeled tractor, I would say, can be used more versatilely. The crawler is then specifically for soil cultivation, for planting usable.
Just a look under the hood reveals the concentrated power. The 6-cylinder diesel engine of the 9520T develops up to 550 horsepower. And here at the LVD in Düben, Saxony, they have recently sold several of these green giant crawlers, and another big green stag is standing in the yard in Düben, the 8360R. Since the spring of 2011, the largest conventional John Deere tractor has been on the market. The new giant has over 400 horsepower under the hood, but there is more than just power in the 9-litre engine of the 8R series. The impact on the environment has also been reduced. And they do this with a concept from the passenger car sector, unlike other tractor manufacturers.
This is the latest generation from John Deere. As of this year, the law requires that low-emission engines be installed, and manufacturers handle this in different ways. In some cases, an additive, urea, is injected into the engines, which means I need an extra tank and an additional system in the machines. We at John Deere have solved this just like in the passenger car sector. We install a particulate filter instead of the silencer. That is what we are seeing here now. And that is how this emission standard is practically met. So we still only refuel with diesel. Nothing else is needed.
Simply keep refueling with diesel. That should be a good selling point. And while the big giants in Dubin are still waiting for their buyers, we are on the lookout for more giants from John Deere, Colditz Castle. During the Second World War, this imposing building was a prisoner of war camp for Allied officers, but there is more to its history than just that. Very close by, Jens Otto also farms his fields. He also offers contract work, and with true giants at that, the contractor bought the John Deere self-propelled sprayer in 2010.
It is simply a large tractor in itself, which I think can also be offered in the future with larger tank capacities. And then it is a real giant when you also see the corresponding work performance there. So we are very, very satisfied if we don't just look at the size of the machine, but simply at the work performance that can be achieved. Thanks to the automatic shut-offs, the engine management and the corresponding automatic driving features, very, very high daily outputs are also possible.
Ben Krauledat has been working for the company in Zermatt since 1995. He has been driving the John Deere for 1 year and is completely satisfied with the self-propelled sprayer. The cab is comfortable, the view is excellent, and what Ben cannot see, the monitors tell him.
The monitor shows me the working speed, the application rate, liters per hectare, the pressure, the area worked, so everything important.
The 5430i has a 4,000-litre tank. The application of liquid fertilizer or growth regulators is optimized with the Yara N sensor. This sensor was actually created for granular fertilization, but here at Agrahand they also use the sensor for crop protection. In 2010, it even won the Innovation Award for Precision Farming. Job finished. The self-propelled sprayer folds up its 24-meter wide spray system. The system can be extended up to 36 meters. Now it is heading back onto the road. And here the giant shows us what else makes it stand out. The track width can be adjusted directly from the cab, from 1 meter 80 to 2 meters 50.
The point here is that I can simply adjust the machine on the fly without getting out and without having to change any pins or other things. And that, of course, also adds to the, how should I put it, enhanced value of the self-propelled machine, that I can enter any row at any time for any customer. And that is extremely important for us as a service provider. Whether it is potatoes, sugar beets, corn or grain, it can be adjusted within 30 seconds. That is a great thing.
And in just a few seconds, this technology makes the John Deere road ready. At nearly 40 kilometers per hour, the 9-meter giant heads back to the home farm after finishing its work. We meet Bernd Gross at the Agrahand Zermatt farm. The new McConnell rotary mower with an 8-meter 20 working width needs maintenance after its work in the rapeseed straw. A larger working width means less soil compaction, but it also requires a little giant as a tractor. Because 8 meters 20, that is no walk in the park. For the small John Deere crawler, however, it is no problem.
There is no problem with that. It handles that easily. Maybe it is a bit too big for the machine. Can it handle anything else?
Here in Zermatt, they rely almost exclusively on John Deere. This primarily simplifies data management. There is a uniform system for all tractors. They have only had the small John Deere crawler here recently, since the spring of 2011. 300 horsepower bring it to life. In Surmouth, they also considered the very large John Deere crawler, but contractor Jens Otto sees the advantages more in the smaller ones.
We have much better maneuverability here, and I can naturally also farm the smaller structures that prevail here with a crawler, where one would otherwise say that it simply does not work with such a giant crawler tractor. I can also drive on the road accordingly. This is a suspended track system, which is a huge advantage compared to the competition. This means I can drive at 40 kilometers per hour on the road, and it is a huge advantage for us that I can actually combine the benefit of solid field cultivation with road travel.
The John Deere journey continues to Nondorf. Today, the very large crawler tractor from the American agricultural machinery manufacturer is to be used here. The 9630T darkens the village's adjacent gardens as it drives to the field for work. The Köckerling cultivator is being prepared. The implement will unfold into an 8-meter wide behemoth. But that should be no problem for the large John Deere crawler. Thomas Dittrich from the company Post Landtechnik swears by the 9630T and demonstrates the enormous power of the crawler tractor. And the cultivator, with a working width of 8 meters, is actually pulled across the field like a child's toy.
That nearly 600 horsepower really start to struggle. It is of course only for large farmers with large contiguous areas. You can naturally achieve a high hectare output with it and thus also work cost efficiently because you save on passes. It is definitely the case that as soon as I operate the control unit, the machine gets a bit more power so that it has full engine speed available in the field, so to speak.
The John Deere works at nearly 12 kilometers per hour, even though it is cultivating about 20 centimeters deep. The nearly 20 tons of the crawler seem to fly across the vast field. Yet the tractor works with pinpoint accuracy, as this green giant also uses the now standard GPS guidance system. So Thomas Dittrich can drive without touching the steering wheel, but that is by no means all.
The machine would also master iTech Pro, meaning automatic headland management, where the machine automatically lifts the implement at the headland, turns, and then automatically lowers it again at the same spot. If you look to the rear now, you can see that the cultivator overlaps minimally. Also einsatzes Startwart, that is regardless of the weather, whether it is dusty or foggy, the machine always drives with a consistent, constant distance.
And the final passes are also being made evenly and, above all, quickly, so the John Deere 9630T can finish its workday early today. These large tractors make farming easier and much more efficient than just a few years ago. And there will be further new developments in the coming years as well. The engineers are already working on them, so look forward to the next episode of Tractor Giants.